we might be achieving success, but we still feel like we're imposters. But we're also constantly in fear that we're one mistake away from failure. Welcome to the Aligned State podcast. I'm Kristian Livolsi, and today we are having an inspiring conversation. And joining me, my incredible co-host, my guru, my friend, Bronwyn Coles.
Welcome to the Aligned State podcast. I'm Bronwyn Coles, and today we're diving deep into a topic that holds back many leaders from stepping into their full potential, which is limiting beliefs. We're lucky to have the one and only Kristian Livolsi here with us today, who'll be sharing his expert insights. Kristian, are you ready to help our listeners break through their limitations?
Oh, Bronwyn, I'm absolutely ready. So let's help people shift their mindset and overcome those self-limiting beliefs.
Fantastic. In this episode of the Aligned State podcast, we get to explore one of the most common obstacles leaders face, limiting beliefs. These deeply ingrained thoughts can prevent us from stepping into our true potential. But with the right mindset shifts, they can be overcome. Kristian shares actionable steps to identify, challenge, and replace these beliefs so you can lead with clarity, confidence, and purpose. Whether you're struggling with self-doubt, fear, or feeling stuck and being stuck, this episode offers valuable insights to help you unlock a mindset of mastery. Tune in to learn how to break free from limiting beliefs, building empowered ones, and take action toward becoming the leaders you're meant to be. All right, Kristian, let's get started with the basics. So what are limiting beliefs and why do they tend to hold leaders back?
Oh, you start with tough questions on me all the time, don't you? Look, limiting beliefs are, in my opinion, are mental barriers that we create. They are often subconscious, and they restrict our potential. Okay, they can stem from past experiences, societal conditioning, and even self-doubt. So for business leaders, these beliefs, Bronwyn, often manifest as thoughts like I'm not good enough, or I'll never succeed, or I don't deserve success. And what that does is it actually holds you back by making you play small, resist all the opportunities that come along, and even keep you stuck in the comfort zone. So overcoming these beliefs, I believe, is crucial for leadership growth as well as business success.
Yeah. Do you think they know how to recognize if there's a limiting belief, or is there a particular way you think they can identify them? You talked about, sometimes having those generic limiting beliefs like I'm not good enough, which, basically every human has on some level. But, what are the triggers, do you think, that would make them realize they have limiting beliefs?
Well, I think there's 2-3 questions there, right? So I think all of them are great. But I think what happens is that often we're wrapped up in the day-to-day grind that we don't take time to reflect on our internal thoughts. Right now, in a previous episode, I know we talked about time and space, right? And I think this is where it's really critical. And we might be, achieving success, but we still feel like we're imposters. And I talk a bit about imposter syndrome, having experienced it, not knowing what it was. But we're also constantly in fear that we're one mistake, right, away from failure. Does that make sense? Like, leaders are constantly thinking we are one mistake away from failure, when really we're only one moment in time away, or one creative moment in time away from actually being successful. So it's the way you reframe that, right? So these beliefs are often so ingrained that we don't question them, and they become the lens through which we view the world. And so it's really essential, and this is why I love what we talked about in the last episode. It's essential to pause, to do the reflection, and to dig into what's driving those inner thoughts. So those triggers then, so that's the other part of your question, those triggers are those fixed mindsets, right? And I'm sure in another episode we're going to talk about mindsets, right? Because that's what we do, and that's how we create alignment in our lives. But I think the triggers are those fixed mindsets. It's those areas of your life, like if you, for example, if you were told to stop eating all the time, you start to develop this phobia around, well, I'm always eating, but you might actually not be eating at all,
Yeah.
right? And so it's not just business. It happens everywhere, and our childhood shapes where we are, but also our adulthood. Trauma and other
Mm.
experiences
Yeah, for
will have
sure.
an impact in the self-limiting beliefs. Um, I was incredibly successful until my early 30s, and then had catastrophic failure. And
Mm.
it took me. I created a whole bunch of self-limiting beliefs after that. One of them wasn't that I couldn't redo it. I always kept going for more. But
Mm.
when you fail catastrophically and you go from semi-retired, turning over $30 million to couch surfing,
Mm.
it's incredible the amount of work you have to do to shift your mindset and to lift those self-limiting beliefs that keep holding you back, from making the same mistakes you made before, but worse, not allowing you to make any mistakes at all.
Yeah. Do you think it's harder or more difficult for people that are successful to acknowledge limiting beliefs than it is for people that are challenged with just setting up a business, or, they're relatively new in a leadership space or an entrepreneurial space?
No, I think that's a really complicated question that has very many variables attached to it. I believe that successful and unsuccessful people struggle to identify their self-limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
I believe the successful people that do it really well understand that nothing is personal, and especially in business, and more importantly, that conflict creates growth. And
Mm.
once you understand that, a lot of the self-limiting beliefs that you may have had just seems to disappear, because
Yeah.
the biggest self-limiting belief is that, for example, a limiting belief is that I have to say yes to everything. Otherwise,
Yeah.
someone's not going to love me. They're not going to care about me. That's just bullshit, right? Fuck it. I
Mm.
say no more than I say yes. You know that. Like, I'm always saying no. I think I did a podcast with Adrian recently on beyond on growth beyond the hustle, where we talked about this, and it's like, no, you've got to say no,
Yeah.
right? You got
Yeah,
to
of
you
course.
got to create. You talk about time and space. Easiest
Mm.
ways to say no, but so many people have this limiting belief that if I say no, you're not going to love me as much. Who gives a shit,
Mm. Mm.
right? If you're not the right person for me and you're going to make that decision, right? So we create these barriers for ourselves.
Mm. So, if in the journey of, you know, becoming reflective and starting to identify limiting beliefs, how do you think someone can challenge or shift a limiting belief once they recognize it?
Oh, look, I think we just touched on it. I think the first step is awareness,
Mm.
acknowledging that the belief for what it is. So for example, if you have a belief like I'm not qualified enough, challenge it with evidence. Ask yourself, what's the truth? Maybe you built a successful company, or you have the expertise that others seek.
Mm.
Replacing that limiting belief with empowering ones requires deliberate practice, Bronwyn. Right.
Mm.
So I say to people, start replacing those old thoughts with new ones that reflect your potential. It's
Yeah.
like reprogramming your mind, right? Bit by bit. I mean, I remember when I was appointed the entrepreneur in resident at Adelaide University, and I was also given an honorary title of an adjunct professor on my 40th birthday. So they are, two titles. Well, there's not that many adjunct professors under the age of 40 at a sandstone university. There is, I was the first ever entrepreneur in resident within Adelaide University at Think Lab, and I didn't think that I was good enough. And yet we helped 66 startups raise $189 million in under
Mm.
12 months.
Mm.
And when you reflect on that, now I that was the first experience I had with imposter syndrome, and it wasn't if it wasn't for one of the professors um, in the psychology area that actually said to me, "You look like you're really struggling with imposter syndrome," and I said, "I'm not an imposter." She goes, "No, no, it's actually a proper thing." And she gave me a paper on it. I went and read it, and then Ruchi, one of my professors that where I was doing
Mm.
my MBA at University of Adelaide. You've met Ruchi, dear
Yeah.
friend of mine. She's now based in Singapore, teaching in one of the top business schools there. You know, she's an organizational psychologist with multiple with a PhD, and
Yeah.
also ran the MBA program. And Ruchi, was the one that said to me, she goes, "You are so powerful, you don't even know it, and
Mm.
you are." Look at the energy that you bring to all of these people who don't believe they can. And sometimes that's all that's needed for people to thrive, right? Is for someone to cheerlead them, right, into actually unpacking what they stand for. But it comes from that self-reflection. Had I not been told to look at imposter syndrome, I
Yeah.
would never have been able to live out my full potential. And even when people then try and take that away from you, right? Like people tried to take that away from me when I got the confidence, right? Because they didn't, I didn't fit the mold of the perfect, I wasn't an Elon Musk. But when you really look at it, you go, hang on a minute, Elon Musk is exactly where I was, just that he, raised billions of dollars and then lost it all, whereas I just raised millions, right? So
Yeah.
it's an economy scale. So you've also got other people's self-limiting beliefs that can
Yeah.
actually get in the way, and so you've got to be pretty strong that when you develop ways to overcome it, you don't allow the negativity of the people around you to then bring you back. And that's the second battle for most people, and that is all from self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. And so if people are starting to wanting to focus on eliminating negative beliefs and cultivating empowered beliefs, how do you think other people can do that? Like you've had your journey, which was really triggered by challenge and adversity, right? And it
Yep.
meant you had to dig deep and pull yourself up and out of it, right? And it's the same for
Not
me.
once, but many times, yes.
Yeah, 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 same. So if you've got people that are in a leadership position and they still want to continue to lead whoever they're leading, how can they start to develop their empowering beliefs?
Well, I think one is they need to understand who they are, right? You need to have your own purpose, your own vision, right? And ultimately, what we teach our clients in our consultancy firm is to get really clear about who you are, who you serve, and what you stand for, right? And if you don't know those three things, then you can't create alignment with the company that you're either working for or you own. So,
Yeah,
I always say to people, an organization is a living, breathing organism. It has its
yeah.
own purpose, its own mission, it has its own values and its own competencies. And then you've got all these organisms, living and breathing organisms that are called people, aka bacterias, right? Good and bad, right? However you want to frame it. But I think what's really exciting about it is you have to then create that alignment. The people that work in your company don't have to have the same values as you do, right? But what they have to do is align with those values, align with your vision, right, as the
Mhm.
organization's vision. Because if they don't do that, it won't work. And then
Yeah,
they have to have complementary core competencies, right?
yeah.
And that brings that alignment. So people, therefore, that's if you have no issues in your life and you live in a picket white fence home and you've got every perfect wife, perfect husband, perfect children, perfect dog, you got all that shit in your life, right? Then that's still the missing link. And how many people do we know, Bronwyn, that have all of that? They have all that perfect, and then they're fucking miserable. And that's
Mm.
because they haven't got that alignment, right? And it's
Yeah,
why you and I have spent so many years working together because you have given me the grounding that I need because obviously I have an incredibly high energy vibration that most people can't keep up with. And I'm polarizing because of it sometimes. But the ability to work with you over all these years has been to ground, right?
yeah.
And then allow people to get a taste of that. Like I've done a documentary with a psychologist who was, thought I was a dickhead when they first met me, and then they became my client and were like, oh my God. And as they became my client, they realized, hang on a second, the world needs to see the real side of you, not this other side that, you know, is either masculine or feminine when it's delivering. And we filmed a documentary that went nuts because everyone's like, hang on a minute, what is this? And
Mm.
and that's why you and I said,
Mm.
hey, isn't it time that we demonstrated to the world what we've been working on for years? And
Yeah,
and that is what's led us to the aligned state.
yeah,
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 hopefully that answered your question.
yeah. So, when you've had that experience of grounding, as you said, and anchoring your energy and bringing yourself into alignment, where you started to observe the shifting of mindset. I know you'd already always done the intellectual mindset shifting, but we've been working on the energetic shifting as well. And the limiting beliefs were changing and no longer in control. What was the difference in feeling for you so that you can give people some sort of sense of how different it might feel if they're in alignment?
Just reframe that question for me.
So as you balanced your energy in alignment, because you brought the mindset and together we did the meditation stuff so that you brought your energy into alignment, you brought your mindset into alignment, you brought your visions into alignment, you were letting go of any limiting beliefs and they were no longer in control. So what did you feel like inside of you so that you could give people a taste of what they might feel if they're truly in alignment?
Look, mindset mastery, right? Let me go there first. Mindset mastery isn't just about eliminating the negative. It's actually about actively cultivating beliefs that empower you. Okay.
Mhm.
And so, I start by asking myself, what do I want to believe about myself? Okay.
Mhm.
So when I went through this process, after learning about all these things, that was the first question that I asked myself. What do I want to believe about myself? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then what you do is you create new affirmations based on what you want to step into, right? So, and you and I worked a lot on that, right? So, for example, instead of thinking I'm not good enough, think I am capable and I'm a visionary leader, right? Now, over time, these positive beliefs will actually begin to take root and you'll feel it, right? And it will
Mm.
shape the way that you show up as a leader, right? So then there's that second part. I'm trying to answer your questions all together. The second part is that you'll know when you start making decisions and taking actions from a place of confidence and clarity rather than fear and doubt. Okay.
Mm. Yeah.
And that's it's a feeling, right? Because you just know once you're aligned, once you know this. And so when you begin to trust your instinct, right, you will lead with purpose and you will move towards your goals without hesitation. That's when you've shifted your mindset, Bronwyn, right?
Yeah.
It's the little wins along the way that will give you the evidence that the new belief system is working, right? And the key is to celebrate each shift, right? And trust the process.
Yeah.
Because, like for example, people often refer to some of the things that I buy as ludicrous, right? Um, I reward myself with something, right? Based on the significance of what I've achieved, right? So, um, lots of people know I have a very large watch collection that spends most of its time on watch winders that irritate my wife. So they're no longer in the bedroom; they're now in the second office at home, and where I love the sound of the dial turning, and then I always as they turn, I look, and each watch reminds me of a significant moment in my life where I sold something. Right now, I've been very lucky. I've had 44 successful exits, and depending on the return of those exits, is the value of the watch that I bought. Now, the irony of it is, I wear an Apple Watch, an Ultra, all the time because it gives me all my vitals that I can upload to my doctor. Right. So, and then I wear my daughter's bracelet that I've had on for 3 years that she made me, and that's the most valuable piece of jewelry I own out of
Yeah.
everything, right? Because so I guess and this year I've done it again. I haven't bought a watch or a pen or anything expensive for a long time because for the last few years my focus has been back on investments and back on putting everything back in. But what I recognized was that I was starting to feel disconnected with what I was achieving, and
Mm.
I was becoming so when you hit a certain point, you also have to be acutely aware that you don't just become robotic, right? And that's
Yes.
the other thing that I learned from I know I've been talking about Elon a lot, but it's because I've just finished reading his autobiography. He's
Mm.
disconnected from his success. When he sold his first company, he spent $1 million on a McLaren, but then he
Yeah.
didn't kind of do that again, right? Like that was a reminder for him. Whereas for me, I've actually put in, I'm on the wait list for a brand new Rolex, right? And my wife's like, "You don't need another one. You've got one." And I said, "Well, I do because if I hit this goal, then that is a reward that I want." And also, for all of you that are out there that collect watches, Rolexes are an appreciating asset. So, you buy the right model, they go up in value. The first Rolex I bought was $8,000. It's now 25,000, and I can
Mm.
sell it on the secondhand market and make my money back 3 times. So
Yeah.
I don't just buy stupid shit that doesn't continue to appreciate. That's the other thing, because
Mm.
I still value money, having lost so much of it during that
Mm.
catastrophic failure. So it's not only about reframing, it's not about also, but it's also about rewarding yourself. So when I look at that watch one, it's like, people that know me laugh. I have so many pens, right? Yeah, I write with one pen, and yet in my bag that I carry around, I have 3 Montblanc pens, all different. Yeah, one's a felt tip, one's a fountain pen, and each pen is symbolic of a moment, right? A moment where something extraordinary happened, and I want it as a reminder. And I think this is, you know where I'm going with this. You've got
Yeah.
to find triggers. Now, everyone has different triggers, right? Why do I have pictures of my family behind me and I have them when they're little? Because it changed my life. Having
Mm.
children made me more accountable, more responsible. That's kind of when I stopped buying shit.
Mm.
Now, instead of buying stuff, we create memories. So,
Mm.
like last year, we reward ourselves with, mini holidays, right?
Mm.
The Japanese call it misoji, like one big goal. And if you achieve it, what do you do? And
Yeah.
so we have one big goal. And then we say, okay, at the milestones, we're going to reward ourselves with 4 trips. Like last year, we did, I think, 5 holidays, 12 weeks of time off. We homeschool the children in that time. And it's really powerful because the children get to experience that. Now, I love travel, right? My wife, not so much. She much prefers the fancy lodges and the cocktails and the dinners. Whereas I love the travel because I love to broaden my mind. But
Mm.
when we went to England, Lucy really wanted to go to England to see the castles. And we went and saw some castles that were mind-blowing, right?
Mm.
And it shows the children what a castle really was like. They're not as gigantic as everyone thinks. Not every castle is like the palace, like Buckingham Palace.
Right.
Um, but it was just stunning. And so there are different types of rewards that make memories as well. And
Mm.
they become triggers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that sort of shows the potential of what can happen when you start to shift your limiting beliefs, really, isn't it? Suddenly things start to open up, all these new opportunities you can create for yourself and the people that are in your life, you know? And I
Yeah,
guess for those people that are listening to this and have the opportunity to be inspired by what Christian's just talked about, then they can start to consider, maybe start to consider right now how you can identify any limiting beliefs and take one action today to start moving forward so you begin to shift it. And then slowly but surely, change is going to happen. So, Christian, this has been
absolutely.
great. It's been great to do this together. And, I hope that everyone who's listening to this has really taken something from it and is willing to delve in, be brave enough to delve into limiting beliefs and start stepping into shedding those limiting beliefs and stepping into your potential, because that gives you more and more opportunity, more and more chance for grace, more and more chance for expansion. So, thank you to all our listeners for joining us today. Thank you, Christian. It's been so great that you could share your view on some of those questions that I asked today. And if you're ready to break free for limiting beliefs and you would like to work with Christian and I, the Aligned State gives you an amazing opportunity to tap in and connect on a daily and weekly basis so that you can keep refining who you are and connecting with who you are and start moving yourself in the direction that you want to go. Until next time, stay aligned and keep mastering your mindset.
Amazing. Thanks, Bronwyn. And thank you to everyone. Remember, subscribe, change your notification settings, and stay aligned.